Greetings and live long and prosper. This is Fleet Chaplain, Danish House. Greeting Starfleet Command Quadrant One. Glad to be with you here on Christmas Day 2020. 2020 has been a good year for Star Trek fans, at any rate. We've had Star Trek Discovery, we've had Season 3, and we had Star Trek Picard. Season 1, we had Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1. We have announcement for many Star Trek projects that are coming out in the coming year. Looking at Picard Season 2, we're looking at Discovery Season 4. We're looking at Lower Decks Season 2. There's also going to be Star Trek Prodigy in the next year. We're with Catherine Janeway in it, which is going to be very exciting for me. I'm excited about that. And of course, Strange New Worlds will also be filming. Strange New Worlds with Captain Christopher Pike and Commander Una and Spock on board the Discovery version of the Enterprise. I'm looking forward to that, perhaps more than any other Star Trek thing in the coming year. For my family, this time of the pandemic has given us the opportunity to try out some Star Trek things that we've never done before. Preeminent among that for my family has been the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game. We've been my kids and I and some other friends have been using Zoom to learn how to play Star Trek Adventures. It's my first role-playing experience, my first real one. I played a couple of sessions of role-playing game in college, but it's been a very long time for me, and I only did a very little of it. So it's been fun to learn how to play Star Trek Adventures this year. For Christmas, my daughter bought me a couple of Star Trek Adventures rule books, which are going to be very helpful in our play. So I'm very much looking forward to that as we're digging into that awesome game. I hope that this Christmas you found some great Star Trek gifts in your stocking or under your tree, and you are able to enjoy some new Star Trek goodies in the year to come. Maybe as you're looking at Star Trek on TV and in the movies, maybe your preference is for the '90s Star Trek shows, or maybe it's for the original series, or maybe it's for the movies, or maybe you really enjoy the shows that are on right now, as I do. Maybe, as I do, you enjoy all of it. Whatever the situation, Star Trek is at hand, close at hand, for in remarkable quantities for all of us. And actually, as grim and difficult as this pandemic has been, it's provided the opportunity for a lot of time inside and a lot of time binging on Netflix or Amazon Prime or CBS All Access, watching the Star Trek that you enjoy. It's been an interesting year. I mean, I don't want to make light of the pandemic in any way, because the pandemic hasn't all been binge watching, has it? It's been a time of difficulty. Many of us have experienced a great deal of loss this year. For some of us, you've experienced in this last year loss of job. Maybe it's been a time in which the pandemic has slowed things down at your work. Perhaps it's slowed things down to the extent that you've lost your job, or your income has been seriously curtailed. That's been a challenge for a lot of people during this pandemic. Maybe the pandemic has meant loss in the sense of not being able to visit with family members at the holidays. Certainly, I'm deeply grieving the fact that I can't get together with my mom this Christmas, and also was at Thanksgiving, the same thing. My mom lives in a senior living arrangement, and they've sort of closed that place off to visitors until the vaccine has made its spread there. And maybe you've experienced that as well. Or maybe you've experienced loss actually of people that you love to death. Maybe folks have died from the pandemic or from some other cause. Christmas is typically a time when we gather together with family and celebrate. And so oftentimes, for those of us who've lost someone we love in the last year, Christmas can be a very difficult holiday, as we have traditions in which family members play an important role, and now in that place where that person used to be, there's a hole. There's a gap where they used to be, and we feel that loss deeply. If that's your situation, I want to just to let you know that I grieve with you, and I want you to know that God grieves with you as well. As you know, I come from the Christian tradition, and so I'm going to share with you from that direction of the religious world. If you're from some other religious tradition, I wish you well, and perhaps the things that I'm saying are adaptable for your tradition. But when I read the Bible, one of the most comforting verses to me in the Bible is Matthew chapter 5, verse 4. Matthew chapter 5, verse 4. This is part of a series of messages that Jesus was preaching from a tall mountain. He's preaching it to a crowd that was gathered around. We typically call this the Sermon on the Mount, and this is the very first part of the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus blesses gives blessings on people, and specifically on people who it was not typically thought of as people who would be blessed. He starts in verse 3 of chapter 5 to say, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." This idea that the poor in spirit, what that means is those who don't have the spiritual resources. They're not the spiritual experts. They're not people who have it all together spiritually. And Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." That's not what we typically think of when we think of a religious teacher saying, "Well, blessed are you if you don't have it all together. Blessed are you if you don't have the spiritual resources to make it through day by day." And when he turns to the second blessing that he gives, it's even more startling. He says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And then he says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. You know, this is not what we would typically think of as a situation in which you would feel blessed, right? If you've lost a job in this year or lost income, if you've lost friends, if you've lost family, if you are grieving the inability to be with family members that you love, or if you've lost someone to death, it doesn't feel like a blessing. And of course, Jesus doesn't say it's such a blessing to lose people. No, rather what he says is, he says, "Blessed are those who are in that situation, because they'll be comforted." Where does that comfort come from? What is he talking about? What comfort does he mean? Well, he's talking about the comfort that God provides. The Bible is very clear that God is close to those who mourn. God is close to those who grieve. God is close to those who have lost things in the previous year. People we love, situations, jobs. God is close. And the closeness of God is a blessing. It's not a blessing that you've lost that job. It's not a blessing that that person you loved has passed away. But the blessing is that in that time of need, God is there to help meet that need. That God is there close to you to give you the comfort that you need. I love the fact that, frankly, this is one of the things that I love the best about the Christian faith, is that Jesus blesses those who typically do not feel blessed. What Jesus says is, especially if you're in a particular state of need, all is not lost. It's not all bad. God is there and near you to comfort you. Now, I know that not all of us believe in God, and I do, and I take great comfort from the fact that God is there for me to bring comfort. And I hope and I pray this year that as you are grieving, as you're experiencing loss, and I think all of us have some measure of loss in this pandemic, that you would know that God has not abandoned you at this time, but that the testimony that Jesus gives is that God comes close to those who are grieving. My personal experience with grief is that it doesn't immediately feel like God is close. Perhaps your experience is different. I don't know. But for me, in my times of grief, oftentimes when I grieve, I feel alone. But what my experience has been in grief, and I've had a lot of grief in my life, is that while it might not feel as though God is close immediately, um, the comfort of God does come. And when God approaches, and when I'm able to um, know the presence of God, um, what I see and what I sense is that God was actually there all along, even when I wasn't certain that he was. That God is close to the brokenhearted, uh, even if the brokenhearted at that moment can't really feel it all that well. I want to encourage you that God does want to draw close to you, and that you can draw close to God, and he'll comfort you. Yeah, times of loss, right? If you've been watching Star Trek Discovery, you know that the crew of the Discovery have taken a trip for good, a one-way trip into the distant future, and they're experiencing a great deal of loss and trying to figure out what life is going to be like in this new situation. That's the situation that all of us find ourselves in during this pandemic, right? We've lost things, and now we lost people, and now we're trying to figure out what life will be like in this new environment. It's difficult. And if you want to talk to someone, if you need someone to talk to, someone who won't judge you and just will listen to you and offer you some comfort, I am here as your chaplain, available for you. Just contact me by Facebook, and I'm happy to connect up with you. All right? Well, thanks for joining me for this holiday greeting. I know it's kind of a sad holiday greeting, but I think a lot of us are experiencing that time of loss. I do want to wish you, whatever situation you're in, a Merry Christmas, and also peace and long life at this usually joyful time of year. I hope and I pray that you're able to experience some of the joy of the season. Uh, and I look forward to talking to you again, and maybe perhaps by Facebook at the next holiday.